What is going on, y'all?
What is going on, y'all? What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave.
Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
I told myself coming on, I'm taking all the hards.
You what?
Just give me the hard part.
30.
God, I forgot about the wager. I would have played this game completely different.
It's not the Ravens.
Who is it? Who is it?
It is actually the Eagles.
Oh, Jalen Hurts!
Yeah, Shirley had 105. Yep.
I'll wager 30 points.
It's going to be hard for you to blow this. Respective draft classes, who was selected higher, Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre?
Rodgers.
What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I take to the airwaves on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter to talk all about the NFL with one fantastic guest. And this week is no short of that expectation. And I'm very excited to bring on Hansel, who I've had on before. I've had Hansel on in the primal days of the Cave. I think it was like episode 6 or 7. I was, very, very excited to have him on. And he's, joining me once again on a very important day here in the NFL. But before we get into all of that, Hansel, thank you for taking the time to hop in tonight, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Last time I was here, I was the champion of the quiz game, so I'm ready to come back and regain my rightful crown, which was stolen from me by, I believe, Matt Perino once he cheated in the quiz game, which ultimately changed the rules of the game. So just throwing that out there to start.
Yes, he does remember very, very clearly. And it's been kind of like a running joke on Twitter that I'd definitely give him his chance to come and fight for that title once again. But a lot has changed. Like you said, Matt Perino's little incident sparked a lot of change to the Cave, not only with the quiz game, but just overall. And now we're here and things have changed, for the better. So if you're not familiar with Hansel, he's a part of Cover One. Actually, at the time, you were not with Cover One at that time. Not. So another big thing has changed. Why don't you tell us about what you do for Cover One and your experience with them so far? That's really huge.
Yeah, I joined Cover One, I think, in July or late June of this year. I'm mainly writing a series I call Matchup Previews, which I've been doing on Reddit since 2019, where I essentially do a really deep dive written preview of the game. So doing that over at Cover One, those guys are awesome. I hop on shows every once in a while when they need me, which is always fun. I always love doing stuff like that and like this, just guest appearances on other shows. So yeah, follow at Cover One. Great content. All those guys over there do great stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Don't sell yourself short either. I know you have your own website and stuff. It's I know at the time you had your own Wordle going on. That was really cool that you put that together. So there's a lot that Hansel does, whether it's on screen or off screen, that definitely deserves recognition. And whether you want to, you definitely go find his social media pages, which are all linked down in the description. I also have Cover One's link tree down there as well. So be sure you're following all sorts of the social medias down there because he's 100% worthy of a follow. So let's hop right into things, man, because we have a lot to cover. The trade deadline was today. And my, oh my, was there an explosion? I was having like a hard time keeping up. I was like running out of breath watching all of these tweets just come flying out of Adam Schefter's account, Ian Rappaport, Ari Marianoff, however you pronounce the dude's name. But all of these guys are just firing tweets off one by one. And I'm like, oh my God, my head is spinning. So let's try and cover it all. And let's start, based on the biggest trade to the smallest trade. I guess it probably should have been the other way around, but the banners are set. The biggest trade that went down today was definitely Denver trading pass rusher Bradley Chubb to the Miami Dolphins, our arch nemesis at the moment, at least to some capacity interdivisionally. What do you think this means for the Miami Dolphins? Does it really move the needle for them that much? Was it worth the first rounder they spent? What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good trade for just this year. Just in isolation, talking about this year, I think the Dolphins are essentially all in. They're trying to win the division one and then try to compete essentially for a Super Bowl. I don't think they're quite ready to do that. I don't think that they're going to catch the Bills in the division race. So I start to think about this further down the line, and I start to say, no, this was not a good trade. They're essentially hemorrhaging draft picks at this point in time on a roster that is going to have cap issues coming up, especially if they have to play Tua. And to be completely honest, Tua is playing good football right now. So He's going to demand a contract in the next year or two. And I don't know how you pay him with all the other players on that roster that are going to demand contracts. apparently they're going to pay Bradley Chubb. I don't know how they're going to fit all these pieces together and these contracts together. I don't think Bradley Chubb is a premier edge rusher. Like, if you gave me Von Miller or Bradley Chubb, I'm taking Von Miller. So I think the Bills are still the better team. It's a good trade in isolation for this year, but not a great trade overall.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, some people were arguing whether or not he was even worth the first rounder that they did give up for him. And like you said, it definitely was a win now type of choice. The Rams seem to have really kind of shown a new side of things to the rest of the NFL, and now teams are starting to realize, you know what, this formula worked for that team, so why not, in our own sake, give it a shot? And that seems to be the formula the Miami Dolphins are following. Of course, they had all of the big transactions this offseason and bringing in Teron Armstead, Tyreek Hill, a bunch of other players as well. And now we're at the trade deadline. They go and get Bradley Chubb, which was huge. And I think not just Bradley Chubb himself, but it's just the combination of Melvin Ingram, Christian, Jalen Phillips. I mean, you're adding Bradley Chubb to be the lead, like the big dragon head to the smaller ones, I guess, for a poor analogy, So, I mean, it's going to be a pass rush that the Buffalo Bills always seem to struggle with, and it seems like it might be a little bit more difficult for us. But the way I almost look at this move for Miami is, what the Buffalo Bills did was go and get Von Miller to try and stop Patrick Mahomes. This is pretty much the equivalent for the Dolphins. It's the Dolphins looking at Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills now, and saying, you know what, we need our guy to go and stop him. And it's pretty much just like big brother, little brother type of thing that's going on between these three teams. It's like we're the middle child under the Chiefs, or at least hypothetically. And that can be argued at this point, but nevertheless. And then the Dolphins are the youngest trying to chase the middle child. So we'll see how it all pans out. But this deadline was big for the Dolphins. They also brought in Zach Wilson, I almost said, but Jeff Wilson wasn't as large, but they made moves. They're definitely all in. And on that note as well, because this branches off in so many directions, this was the final first rounder that the Dolphins had this year. So they traded one away. Or they traded this one away for Bradley Chubb. The other one they had stripped because of the tampering thing that went on with Tom Brady earlier this offseason. So they no longer have a first rounder. That takes them out of any potential, race for a quarterback in the draft if, hypothetically Tua went down the drain for one reason or another. So they're committing to Tua long term. This is, like you mentioned, they're probably going to end up paying him. This is their commitment to Tua. Whether it pays out or plays out down the line, I guess we'll come to find out. But yeah, this was a big move for a number of reasons. It had a lot of different implications.
For sure. And I'll say, like, one further thing about that, giving up that first round pick is kind of a big deal, because I think if there's one major weakness on this team, it's their offensive line. It's not good. It's actually pretty bad. The thing that kind of benefits them is their game plan, Tua getting the ball out quick, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle getting open quick. But that first round pick would have gone a long way in kind of addressing that. Now they're going to have to wait until the second or third round, where it's a little bit more of kind of a crapshoot on whether or not you're going to find a guy that can, protect at the guard positions or the right tackle position. So again, I think this season, I think they're better today than they were yesterday, but long-term, I don't think that this was probably the right choice for them. But I guess we'll see. We never know.
Right. I know a lot of people were probably saying similar stuff when the Rams did all of their gymnastics too. So, and it ended up paying off. So we'll see, like you said. Before we get to the second piece of news, Kim, thank you for hopping in. If you guys have any comments, thoughts, opinions you want to throw in the comment section, we'll be happy to touch on it. But as always, Kim, thank you for popping in and leaving your hellos. The second piece of, this is all numbered incorrectly. Well, we'll just switch that around. The second relatively big trade that went down today, this came out of the depths of left field. I mean, I could not have seen this one in a million years. Not a single rumor. Nobody could have predicted this. I don't care who you were. Calvin Ridley traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And before we indulge in this, the last time you were on the show, you had a hot take, and I want to revisit that real quick. All right, so now we're going to move into the hot take. I'm not sure if you came prepared with one.
I got one.
All right, perfect. So if you want to start,
So I've been kind of outspoken about this. I got the Jaguars making the playoffs and having a home game.
Wow. Yeah, wow. That was my reaction at that time was wow. And Justice, ironically enough, had the same take. And I was just like, what could possibly be through these guys' minds? I'm looking at this roster. It's like bunch of mid-tier wide receiver twos, a defense that's you still got a long way to go, a lot of young talent. It's like, oh my God. Like, and honestly, I was like, these guys are nuts. And they started out the year hot. And all I can think about watching this Jaguars team, watching Trevor Lawrence was you and Justice the whole time, because I remember thinking to myself how absurd that sounded at the time. And they're out here playing amazing football. But now they get Calvin Ridley. And this, like I said, came completely out of left field. And we'll start with your initial thoughts on it, because this is wild.
Yeah, honestly, when I first heard it, I thought, is this allowed? I thought that there was a rule stipulation somewhere that if a player is suspended, they cannot be traded. I guess that isn't a rule. I guess that's just something I made up in my head. Calvin Ridley is a talented wide receiver. Like, I don't really think there's much debate over that. I think there might be some debate over how talented is he, but he's got some things like where he's in his own head. I know I was dealing with some Falcons fans last year, like going through on their Reddit, going back and forth with them, trying to understand what was happening with Calvin Ridley prior to his suspension. And what they all seem to say is that as soon as he became the wide receiver one, he began to struggle. And those struggles were things he was not used to. And he started just kind of falling apart mentally on the football field. I don't know if you can come back from that. It's like the yips. Like, if you were a baseball fan at all, Chuck Knobloch couldn't throw the ball from second base to first base at one point in his career, and there was no fixing that. It was all mental. I don't know what this trade is. I'm really confused by it. I knew that the Falcons were kind of done with Calvin Ridley, but the Jaguars are just trying to figure something out at this point in time. And the one thing I'll say about my hot take, so it was a hot take for a reason. I knew it was hot.
Yes, it was.
A lot of it was based on, I thought the Colts were going to suck. And the Colts suck. I thought the Titans were going to suck, and they somehow don't suck. I don't know what the hell is going on. Mike Vrabel deserves a lot of credit there. And then I never believed in Trevor Lawrence. I thought the Jaguars would be good, but I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. And I was wrong about the Jaguars being good, but I'm still right about Trevor Lawrence not being a good quarterback.
Yeah, you've hit. I mean, honestly, and of course, I left out a lot of context just for the sake of time, so you had to defend yourself a little bit.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that you predicted have come true. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts, which at the time, if you would have, which I don't remember, I probably did think it, but I was high on the Colts prior to the season beginning. I didn't think there was. It was like a foolproof roster to me. It's just turning around and handing the ball off to Jonathan Taylor with an improvement at quarterback. How could they get worse? Well, we figured out how very fast, but I just was looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars this season and the way they were moving the ball. Trevor Lawrence has looked good, but I'm not sure what's really changed. I haven't watched enough of Jaguars football to understand what has gone wrong up to this point. I mean, Christian Kirk was looking like a solidified wide receiver one, making it seem like the money they paid him was worthy. And he hasn't really fallen off necessarily. I just think the ball's not finding him the same way it was prior to the last couple of weeks. I thought their defense was kind of returning to that Saxonville type mentality as well. But, now we got to the trade deadline and Josh Allen, the linebacker, was in heavy trade talk. So things have changed quick in the last few weeks. And I think Calvin Ridley specifically, which is interesting, you point to that the mental side of the game got a little bit too much when he was called upon to be the wide receiver one. Well, now, I mean, he's going to have help behind him, but now the way this is going to turn is that Calvin Ridley's going to be that guy for Trevor Lawrence to take the next step. So that's going to be pressure on him too. We've seen Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs. We got Jalen Hurts with A.J. Brown. There's Tua with Tyreek Hill. There's all these examples of these wide receivers being acquired by these teams for their young quarterbacks for them to take the next step. Calvin Ridley's next on that chopping block. So, I mean, the pressure, I think it might get even larger. I mean, you go from playing with Matt Ryan behind Julio Jones, and you were in a pretty decent situation at the time, and now you're going to be looked at as almost the saving grace for, the Jacksonville Jaguars offense in a way. So if he's able to fight through that, I think this could be very beneficial for Trevor Lawrence specifically. But that's an interesting point you make and something we definitely have to watch out for.
Yeah, and the pressure that you talked about with him going to Jacksonville, it's going to be immense. Like he's coming back after a year suspension. Like if he shows signs of very serious rust, it could spell the end of his career. And then also with Trevor Lawrence, like he's entering the third year of his career when he gets Calvin Ridley on the football field. If Trevor Lawrence doesn't perform up to expectations and the expectations that were kind of levied on him coming out of college next season, he might be relegated to a backup role moving forward in his career, a la Baker Mayfield. So there's a lot of pressure on the both of them, and the two of them, if they don't work, I think the two of them are both going to fall.
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right. I think Trevor Lawrence is he's not been a bust, but definitely not lived up to expectations up to this point. Playing a lot of superhero ball, trying things that just aren't necessary at the wrong time. And it's been costing his football team. And Travis Etienne's really becoming the identity of that offense rather quickly. And I think that's good for Trevor Lawrence, but he's certainly not lived up to those expectations. And hopefully Calvin Ridley's able to, prop him up to the place that we all thought he would be at, especially going to year 3. We do have a question. Mikey says, are you happy with what the Bills did at the deadline? Which I want to touch on. I don't want to get to it yet, but we will talk about the Bills, of course, very, very soon. So we'll touch on that in a second. The third piece of recent news, the third trade that I wanted to talk about was the Detroit Lions trading away tight end TJ Hawkinson to the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings essentially traded back. They didn't lose any picks. They just kind of traded back and got TJ Hawkinson. And the Lions lost TJ Hawkinson and kind of traded up. I don't know about you, but the Vikings are clear winners here. A lot of trades went down, and this was by far the most one-sided victory for one team in one of these transactions that I thought by a mile.
Yeah, I saw this trade, and my first thought was, of course, the Vikings trade for a Pro Bowl tight end right before they play the Bills. We play them after we play the Jets. So we're going to have to deal with TJ Hawkinson on top of Justin Jefferson now. But so we'll see how that goes. But you're right. Like the Vikings traded back in, I think, from the second round to the third round and third to fourth or fourth to fifth, one of those two.
Yeah.
And they get a Pro Bowl tight end from a division rival. It makes no sense. I don't understand what the Lions were doing here. Like if they had shopped TJ Hawkinson elsewhere, I'd be astonished if they didn't get a better offer than what the Vikings sent them. The Vikings clearly won this trade, like very clearly won this trade.
Yeah, especially, if of course, this doesn't necessarily affect the Lions at all, but they lost Irv Smith, which I think was the propelling factor behind this. They lost their starting tight end for like 8 to 10 weeks with an ankle sprain, so I'm sure that was why they were even on the market in the first place. But to help a divisional rival like that without even gaining as much compensation that you probably should have been getting for a guy like TJ Hawkinson was interesting. Like, I wonder if the Vikings just kind of reached out with like a, hey, like, what's the price? And like, I wonder if he was even on the market, because I didn't hear any type of rumor about TJ Hawkinson. Like, I feel like I didn't see anything. And I wonder if the Vikings just kind of knocked on the door and the Lions were like, take him. Like, I don't know. Very weird situation. But, the Lions, we all thought we're going to turn a new leaf this year. But, obviously things haven't gone to plan. My initial take on the Lions, I've had a lot of bad ones, but this one I've been I hit the nail on the head, at least so far, and I want to rep myself a little bit because I've been getting torched. But I said, the Lions are going to be like a 4-win team again this year. The offense is not going to be good enough to keep up with that defense because of how many points they're going to give up. And at first, the Lions offense was trying their hardest to score as many points as possible to help them win football games, but that still wasn't enough. And now they're back to, Jared Goff being Jared Goff, and, things have gone downhill. So, this didn't help whatsoever. That's Racing said the Lions didn't want to pay him, I guess, but at the end of the day, you definitely deserved a little bit more than what you gave up for TJ.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. This one happened. Also happened today. There's one trade that didn't happen today, but we'll also touch on. But this would be Pittsburgh trading wide receiver Chase Claypool to the Chicago Bears. I thought I read the notification. I'm like, this is great. I really like this trade for Justin Fields and the Bears, getting a second wide receiver next to Darnell Mooney. Justin Fields been turning it up lately. I thought this was a great fit. And then the trade compensation came out, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably a little bit more than he was worth. And then it also came out that it wasn't the what pick was it that the Bears had instead? Irregardless, the Bears had 2 second-round picks, and it was a pick that's like 10 or 15 round or draft picks higher than the other second rounder they had, if that makes sense. So, long story short, it was overpayment for a guy that has not really proved himself in the NFL. He's, of course, got every attribute in the book that you could ever want in a wide receiver, and he's extremely young. but of course he's just not panned out. So I thought this was a bit much for the Bears, but at the end of the day, he's going to help Justin Fields, and I guess that's what's important after all, right?
Yeah, I mean, same thing with you. Like, thought this was an overpayment, but at the same time, I think the Bears are kind of in a desperate situation, right? Like, they need more skill talent, and they don't need that skill talent necessarily to compete this year. I don't think they're competing this year, but they need to see what Justin Fields is, and you really have 3 years to find out what your quarterback is. And Justin Fields' first year was atrocious. This second season, he is improving. Like, as the season goes on, he is playing better, but you still need to see more. And Chase Claypool gives them the opportunity to see that. One thing I'll say, like, and I forgot which reporter reported this out. Apparently, the Packers did offer for Chase Claypool,
Yes, I saw that.
but the Steelers ultimately chose the Bears because they presume that the Bears will have the better draft pick than the Packers. So interesting that the Packers kind of went for a wide receiver, didn't get one, and then just settled for the absolute atrocity that they've given Aaron Rodgers this season.
Yeah, that's definitely very, very interesting is a good word to use. I don't know if you saw the clip of Mike McCarthy kind of being asked when he was the head coach of the Packers. He was asked something, what is this time of year like, inside the Packers organization, referencing the trade deadline. And he's just kind of like, I think he responded with, isn't that next week? As if like, they had no idea because they just don't do anything. And that still lives true today. A Hall of Fame quarterback, maybe this could be his last year. I mean, the rate they're going at, and they just do nothing. I'm still dumbfounded by that, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, if Sammy Watkins or Romeo Dobbs or Alan Lazard, if one of those guys is your wide receiver one, you have some really serious issues. Like, they might have a worse overall wide receiving core than the Bears, and that's saying something. I think it's close. But yeah, to see Aaron Rodgers, I think he still has it. Like, against the Bills, he made a couple throws where I'm like, yep, he's still Aaron Rodgers. Yep. But at the same time, he just doesn't have any talent around him at those skill positions to be able to kind of dominate the way he normally does. So Claypool probably would have helped a little bit, but lo and behold, they don't get Claypool. The Bears get Claypool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very interesting situation, which is, something we'll indulge in a little bit later as well, because there's a lot that can be said about where the Packers are at right now. But we'll keep moving through. We have two more trades that I wanted to touch on. This one happening 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, but it wasn't yesterday or today. I know that. Roquan Smith, after his buddy Robert Quinn was traded, he gets traded away to the Baltimore Ravens. And this, I thought this was a pretty good deal for the Ravens. And, they're paying him. A lot of people were thinking this was a rental, but considering the compensation they gave up, they're 100% paying Roquan Smith, and they're adding him to a relatively experienced and talented front seven as is. And a lot of people are talking about how much Patrick Queen has struggled this season with the responsibility of having to play coverage on his shoulders. Now he's going to have a lot of that responsibility uplifted off his shoulders because of this off-ball linebacker acquisition and the two-time second-team All-Pro Roquan Smith. So what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been high on the Ravens since the preseason. Like, one of my big things, along with the Jaguars take, was that the Ravens would win the AFC North. And I think that's panning out. Like, the fact that the Bengals lost last night to the Browns is just embarrassing. The Ravens haven't played great football, but I think that they're so talented that I don't understand how they can't win that division with everything else going on there. Roquan Smith makes that defense way better. He's one of the best linebackers in all of football, but they're paying him. Like, you don't give up the compensation they gave up and not pay Roquan Smith. The only concern I have with them is very similar to the Dolphins. Like, you got to pay Lamar at some point, right?
Yep.
And how are you going to pay Roquan? He's going to demand close to $20 million a year, just like Tremaine Edmonds is going to try to demand. I don't know how you're going to pay Roquan and then also pay Lamar essentially $60 million a year. What he wants fully guaranteed. It's just going to be a tricky situation that they're going to have to work out in Baltimore.
Yeah, that was the first thing that people were saying when, they made that acquisition was, you got a guy already that's pretty important to your football team that you haven't paid. So how do you plan to, work this out? So that'll be a very tricky situation that I think the Baltimore Ravens front office is just kind of putting in the back of their mind and forgetting about right now and just kind of taking it day by day and hoping it just kind of figures itself out. And maybe it will. I don't know what the future holds for Lamar Jackson. If, this was the NFL 2 or 3 years ago, or even in any other period of time, I would say Lamar Jackson's not leaving the Baltimore Ravens, and there's just nothing else to it. But after the offseason we experienced, a few months ago, anything is possible, and I'm not ruling anything off the table at this point. So who knows, I guess, is where we're at with the Ravens. But similar to the Packers, another team that have been struggling with pass catchers, Rashad Bateman's going to be out for a few weeks with a foot injury. Mark Andrews is dealing with a shoulder. And I thought they were 100% going to be buyers of a wide receiver at this deadline as well. But lo and behold, they sit tight with what they have. And I guess they're going to have to lean on Mark Andrews and the up and coming Isaiah Likely and, Devin Duvernay too, who's actually been pretty reliable for them. But I thought for sure DJ Moore was, a Raven after Bateman's injury.
Yeah. I think, now that they stood pat here and, they can't make a trade anymore, I do think that they're going to play a part in the OBJ sweepstakes at some point. Yeah. Like Lamar's going to start kind of calling OBJ and saying, "Why don't you come to Baltimore?" And it's going to be OBJ's decision. He's essentially going to pick between, the Bills, maybe the Ravens, maybe the Chiefs, maybe the Rams. Like he's going to have a lot of suitors. It's where he wants to go and what he wants. Does he want a ring this year, or does he want that long-term contract? And I don't know who's going to give him that long-term contract, but it's going to be up to, OBJ where he goes. But I think the Ravens will probably be in on that now after they didn't go after a wide receiver at the deadline.
Yeah, you'd like to think, right? They're definitely going to need help. Rashad Bateman's very good. I think he's talented enough to definitely be the wide receiver one on a team like Baltimore that's so run heavy as is. But without him, Devin Duvernay is more of a gadget guy that's somehow turned into a red zone threat. But, I think Isaiah Likely is going to be the guy that really needs to step up to the plate. And he's been their worst kept secret. In the preseason, he dominated. It's taken him a little while to really see some type of volume. But once Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman got hurt last week against the Bucs, we started to see what he can do. And I think it's only a matter of time until he really gets involved in this offense more and more. So I guess they're probably hoping that their tight ends carry them the way until Rashad gets healthy. And then maybe Odell Beckham Jr. is interested. So you make a very good point on that one. All right, and the final trade that I wanted to touch on, and this is the Buffalo Bills transaction that went down today. It would be Nyheim Hines getting traded to the Buffalo Bills right before the deadline ended. We've been in the market, supposedly, obviously, for a running back for the last few weeks. We kicked the tires on Kamara. We kicked the tires on McCaffrey. And now we're here. Nyheim Hines was the last running back that we were linked to, and we sealed the deal. What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think like when a lot of Bills fans thought about, running back, like getting a running back, they thought what the Bills wanted was kind of a thumper, a guy that could run between the tackles and pick up the short yardage. And McCaffrey is capable of that, even though he doesn't seem that way. Kamara was capable of that. Josh Jacobs was a name people were throwing out there that probably was never really on the market, but Bills fans wanted. Nyheim Hines is not a between the tackles runner. He is a little dude that's super fast and can run away from people. So it kind of tells me that the Bills are, they're looking for a very specific running back. That's why they drafted James Cook. That's why they tried to sign J.D. McKissick, and then McKissick backed out. They go and get Nyheim Hines, who I think will see a decent amount of time at the running back position. I still think Devin Singletary will be the RB1. I think Hines is going to eat into James Cook time on the field. But more importantly, I think Nyheim Hines is a really, really good returner, and he's really, really sure-handed at the return. So he's going to be returning punts. It'll be interesting to see if he returns kicks, and I think he could be a different maker in that facet, especially with the way the Bills' defense can play this season.
Yeah, 100%. This was a very Brandon Beane type acquisition, right? A guy that's, of course, talented in his own right, but there's two ways to make the Buffalo Bills in 2022. It's either you're versatile and you help out the team in many different aspects, or you offer a premium. And Nyheim Hines, he does offer a premium to some extent, but it's more the versatility that he offers to this football team. He can run the ball, be a change of pace guy when you need him to, but it's more important that he's that guy that comes out of the backfield on third down, long passing downs. And like you mentioned, the return game, which is going to be very, very huge, I would assume, in his role here because of the Jamison Crowder injury. I'm not sure how much I trust McKenzie back there. I know he's been fielding a few. And I think Khalil Shakir's been relatively sure-handed up to this point, to his credit. But, we're in a season where the margin for error is so small that I'm more than happy to hand the keys off to a guy that's as experienced as Hines is. And I think a lot of people were on Twitter very upset that we went and got a guy that's going to cut into James Cook's workload just because he seems to be gaining that confidence. But going back to my point, this is a year where our margin for error is small. Our rookies, they'll develop over time, whether they're getting as many reps as, they were before or not. Like, this is just, the nature of this football team. They're going to get better. James Cook's not going anywhere. I don't think Hines is necessarily any kind of long-term answer. He's just a guy that we're going to be bringing in to, help accelerate our run toward a Super Bowl here. And I'm not too upset that, Cook's role is getting relegated, and I'm glad we were given the keys to a veteran like Hines.
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard the trade, I was like, it took me a second to really think it through. But at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, I mean, it makes the Bills better. Like, the Bills are better now. I can confidently say that. They replaced Zach Moss with, Naheem Hines, which that's an upgrade to me. And they only really gave up a 6th-round pick that I think can become a 5th-round pick. Yep. There's some condition on that. What that condition is, I don't really know. When I heard it, Hines, good trade. Bills got better today.
Yep, exactly. And it's as simple as that. And, at the end of the day, we got to trust Brandon Beane and what he thinks is right for this football team. And I think there's no ifs, ands, buts about the very, very low risk and I think potentially high reward in this type of transaction. Getting rid of a guy that has not been a fan favorite of the Bills, too, in Zach Moss, who's just kind of been eating a roster spot. So, very happy with that move, at least in my mind. So no reason to be upset, Mafia. There's plenty of upside to be had in this trade. All right, so that covers pretty much all the important stuff with the trade deadline. We're going to move into the next segment, in which I like to call Over the Fire. This is the segment where, if you're unfamiliar with it, I implemented it a couple weeks ago. I'm going to present Hansel with a team or a player, 3 of them, and he's going to tell me whether they're cooked, they're done, there's no turning back for them, and their year's over, or they're uncooked. There's still time for them to redeem themselves. Maybe they turn things around. So let's get into it. And a couple familiar participants in the cooked or uncooked are going to be appearing from last week, just because some things have changed that may have, somebody's mind change as well. But starting with the fact that the Green Bay Packers have, dropped the last, 4 games now. And now they go to the deadline and they did not do anything. So are they cooked? Are the Packers cooked?
Oh, man. I don't. In my head, I don't want to say they're cooked because I had money on a Bills-Packers Super Bowl. But I'm starting to think they're cooked. And the reason I say that is just because the NFC is it's so weird this season. Like, the Giants are, what are they, 6-2 now? Yep. And their schedule's a joke. The Dallas Cowboys, I think, are 6-2 as well, and their schedule's a joke. So those 2 are going to get a wild card spot. Do they deserve to be in the playoffs? I don't think so. I don't think either of them are particularly great. The Cowboys are decent. Giants suck, I think. But then I go to the 49ers. I think the 49ers will find a way into the playoffs. And then the Seahawks are playing well as well. So at the end of the day, I look at the Packers and I say, how are you going to catch any of them? You're not going to catch the Vikings. You're 4 games in the loss column behind them, 4.5 really, because you lost to them. It's crazy to say that an Aaron Rodgers team is cooked 8 games into the season, but I think they're cooked.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you, man. I mean, they sat on their hands on the most important day of the year for them. If they wanted any chance of moving the ball, they had to go get a playmaker. I mean, Allen Lazard has been injured too, so that only adds to the punishment that has been their wide receiving corps. I mean, Romeo Doubs made a nice catch against the Bills this past week, but otherwise they really haven't had any deep, down the field threats. Christian Watson also got re-injured. That dude is apparently made of paper mache. Poor guy can't stay healthy. And of course, Allen Lazard's dealing with injury. So now it's pretty much on Aaron Jones because A.J. Dillon in his own right has not looked good this season. A.J. Dillon's been struggling in terms of yards after contact. Aaron Jones has really been the life to this team, and he's been getting a majority of the touches, but that only goes so far. I mean, we saw in the third quarter, every play was a run. I mean, they pretty much waved the white flag. And had they not done that so prematurely, they might have had a chance to sneak up on us down the stretch. So thankfully, they kind of almost gave up at what it seemed like in the third quarter. But, their season is definitely looking bleak. And if I was a Packers fan right now watching this front office pretty much waste what could be the last year of, your Hall of Fame quarterback with an unpromising Jordan Love sitting behind him, I mean, what are you doing? Pretty terrifying. All right. So the next cooked or uncooked candidate is going to be somebody that also had a change within the last week. So last week they were, I think uncooked was the answer. But this week, I'm interested to hear what you got. Tom Brady, cooked or uncooked?
I'm saying cooked. I've watched a lot of Tom Brady this year just because he so happens to be on my TV all the time. He doesn't look good. Like we talked about Aaron Rodgers, and I can still see him making Aaron Rodgers-esque throws, and he has nobody to throw to. Tom Brady, yeah, the teams have been injured from time to time, but really he still has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Like he still has talent on that roster, and he just is not playing good football. He can yell at his offensive line all he wants, but the arm looks weaker. Like he's not able to deliver the ball with as much speed. Man, I think he's cooked. They might sneak into the playoffs just because that division is atrocious, but yeah, Brady himself cooked.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just like I said, the reason I ask. Last week, the answer from Frank, my guest, was uncooked. And then the following day after their game, when they lost to the Ravens, he gets his divorce official. So I know there's speculators out there that, obviously think that has played a major factor into his poor play this season. So I know some people, partially like myself, I'm not going to lie, are kind of thinking, you know what, this is behind him now. He's going to start to clear his head. He's going to have a peace of mind. So maybe he'll turn things around. So that's what makes me somewhat hesitant to say cook, just because it's Tom Brady, right? So it obviously, there's always the benefit of the doubt, for the way things are going for him in the back of your mind. But yeah, I mean, cooked is a very, very, very fine answer. Just the way he's looked just so frustrated. I mean, he's throwing, he just doesn't look to be on the same page too. It's like the mental side of the game he's been really struggling with too. It's like Mike Evans doesn't seem to be on the same page as him. Those two guys, I mean, from the second that Brady got there, they were clicking. I mean, every single pass, these guys knew where they were going to be. I mean, now all of a sudden, I mean, Mike Evans doesn't know, how deep to make his cut. Tom Brady doesn't know where he's going. It just doesn't look like the mental side of the game for Brady's there. And I think he's getting very frustrated with himself too, which is, played into the, the performance we've seen on the field.
Yeah, and one really odd thing with this season, so I said Tom Brady's cooked, but then you have a couple of the other old guys like Aaron Rodgers, I still think has it, though he's struggling this year. Matt Ryan cooked, like he's done. Oh, yeah. He's benched for Sam Ehlinger. Matthew Stafford does not look good. Like, how did in a single offseason all these guys that are perennial great players just now they're awful? Like it's something weird happened. I don't know what it is. Nothing changed in the rule book that significant that kind of blew up these guys' spots in the league. But to see four very veteran players all basically end their career essentially is kind of overwhelming when you think about it. Like how would these guys just fall off a cliff in the same offseason? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can make your best educated guess, per specific situation. I think Matt Ryan, I thought is as poor as it may have looked on paper with Atlanta, he was doing his best. The dude is 36 years old behind the skeleton of an offensive line with pretty much just Kyle Pitts, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Russell Gage to throw to. And he looked pretty good doing it in his defense. So you're assuming he goes to a team behind what was supposed to have a good offensive line with a good run game, pretty solid physical receivers, that he was gonna flourish, high processor, confident in the pocket. But I think, at least in Matt Ryan's case, he was just, I think he got so scared. Like he was scared of getting hit. He was scared of, turning the ball over because he was afraid of the hit that was coming, and he would eventually take sacks, or he would just throw the ball away into a spot that he shouldn't. I think as far as Matt Ryan goes, it was his brain that was cooked more than his arm. And I think that also played into the way his arm was performing too. But you could say the same about Brady, like we were touching on. Matt Stafford, I don't know. I don't know what's been going on with Matt Stafford this season. He's on pace for 17 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. I mean, he threw a lot of picks last year, but he was throwing touchdowns along with it. Like he's blowing up the end zone. I think my theory is that not having Van Jefferson to open up the deep shot. Yeah, it could be what's playing into it. Matthew Stafford's having a tougher time, finding Cooper Kupp in, triple coverage instead of the usual double coverage he may be seeing, but who knows? But these guys, like you were saying, I think out of the four you named, Aaron Rodgers has by far looked the best, and that's not saying much, but it's crazy to think about. But with that in mind, we'll move on to our final cooked or uncooked candidate, and we saw this team perform last night, and it was ugly. The Cincinnati Bengals sit at 4-4. This might be a premature chicken to put over the fire, but are you thinking they're cooked or uncooked?
Yeah, so right before the season started, I sent out a tweet that pissed some people off. I said the Bengals aren't making the playoffs this year, and I was very confident about that before the season started. I'm even more confident now, but I'm not going to say they're cooked. The AFC is weird, right? Like the Jets are in a playoff spot right now. I think come season end, the Jets are not going to make the playoffs. After especially watching Zach Wilson play football, I don't know how that team could make the playoffs. The Bengals, they have talent on their roster, so to see them fall to that Browns team, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. But at the same time, they've lost to all three of their division mates, which means for them to win that division, they have to have. They're not going to win a tiebreaker. Like at the end of the season, they're going to lose the tiebreaker to all three of those teams that they're tied. They have to have more wins. And at 4-4, I don't know how they're going to be able to do that with 3 more games against those teams. I think they're fighting for a wild card spot with maybe the Jets, which is just incredible. Yeah, I'm not going to say cooked, but they're real close. They're real close.
Yeah, I mean, this team, it's been bad. When I was making my record predictions before the year started, I was just like you, thinking they don't make the playoffs. But I started to slowly talk myself out of it. I'm looking at the roster and, the things that happened last year, the wide receiver corps. I'm like, all right, 9-8 is what I ended up landing on. And I thought that was respectable enough. And that probably, I think if I played my record predictions out, that would have been the 6th or 7th spot. Probably the 7th, but nevertheless, I did have them making the postseason after all. But, my previous intellect is telling me like, this team ain't it. This team ain't it. We saw it game after game after game last season, and they just managed to pull, the Cinderella game out of their Cinderella story out of the hat. Every game, it felt like there was just a miracle. And it didn't look like they were a Super Bowl team in the Super Bowl itself. The Rams didn't either, to be fair. But long story short, the defense played way above expectations. The talent level on that defense was not as high as, the level that they played at. They, of course, had an offensive line that was getting Joe Burrow killed. And we are seeing or at least we saw after 60 minutes of football without Jamar Chase, how important that guy actually is to that football team. Without the explosive, dynamic playmaking ability of Jamar on the outside, they looked lost. Zach Taylor looked completely lost. Joe Burrow, of course, behind the offensive line that was supposed to be improved, lost. He was captain check down all damn night. I think Joe Mixon had like 10 targets. I mean, Joe Mixon's not a pass catcher for the most part. And last week he was. And of course that defense is dealing with injuries in its own right, but it's also struggled. DJ Reader up front's down. They lost Chidobe Awuzie and Trey, I think it's Trey Flowers, in the secondary. So Eli Apple, I think, is also not even been, I don't even think he's been starting. So he hasn't been great. They've looked like the team that a lot of people like us were thinking they'd look like. And if Jamar Chase's hip injury is, turns out to be more serious, than I think they're coming out and saying outright this year could probably be over if they don't figure it out on the offense. And I don't trust Zach Taylor to do that.
No. And as for Joe Burrow, so last night I actually did a show for Cover One, the Air Raid Hour, and I got off and I go, to the TV, and I think what was it, 31-0 or something like that. Like the Bengals hadn't scored. And I'm like, how could this be? I wasn't paying attention during the show. And I looked at Burrow's stat line. He had like 100 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. He ended up finishing with like 230, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Yeah. But 130 yards and 2 touchdowns were in literal garbage time. Like it was not impressive. I was not impressed watching those 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Browns were sitting back and prevent, just like, okay, yeah, throw the ball. We don't really care. And so at the end of the day, his stat line looked better than it was. But Burrow struggling without Jamar is something I expected. I don't think I expected it to be that bad against that Browns team. But I guess we're going to see moving forward, like, can Burrow kind of carry this team or not?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of Joe Burrow truthers coming right out of that Super Bowl were, they top 6 quarterback. I mean, they had this guy in conversations with the best in the game. And now without, 1 game removed from Jamar Chase and, it was ugly. I mean, he was not even, it didn't even seem like T. Higgins was involved. His one big play was that he mossed Greedy Williams and pretty much did everything and walked in the end zone because T. Higgins is unbelievable. And I think it's just a combination of Zach Taylor not being creative enough to move the ball. I think Joe Burrow, of course, like we were just talking about, just struggles to, find somebody open when Jamar Chase isn't drawing as much attention. So They're going to need something. I don't know what it is. I think Joe Mixon sucks. They're going to need him to pick it up. The offensive line, of course. I mean, Joe, don't get me started. I did a show after the game last night, and I went on like a 15-minute rant about how bad Joe Mixon is.
Oh, I'm super low on Joe Mixon. I have never understood the hype ever. His yards per carry for the past few years is horrendous, by the way. And people always kind of poo-poo on Devin Singletary and what he's capable of. And I'm like, Devin Singletary is producing arguably better stats on a per carry basis than Joe Mixon is, but Joe Mixon gets all this hype. I don't get the Joe Mixon love at all. And the Bengals itself, like, again, like you said, it was a Cinderella run. I don't think the Bengals were even close to the best team in the AFC, let alone a top 2 team in the NFL. They just kind of snuck into the Super Bowl by the hairs of their chinny chin chin, while they found a way to somehow beat the Raiders and somehow beat the Titans and somehow beat the Chiefs. And then finally, thank God the Rams beat them.
Yeah, thank God it's right, because I would have lost my mind if the Bengals won the Super Bowl, man. I bet against them every step of the way in that postseason, and they bit me in the ass every time. And I bet against them in the Super Bowl and almost was forced to literally pay for it again. But yeah, so the Bengals, long story short, I might say they're cooked. I just don't think I have faith in the play calling, the creativity of that offense to figure it out without Jamar. And I do have this eerie feeling that this hip injury that he has is being underplayed. It's being downplayed, and they're just not really acknowledging how bad it could be. And they're not gonna, if by the time he's ready to return and they're 4-7, what's the point? I mean, you're going to bring him back and attempt to force yourself into a 6th or 7th wildcard spot, potentially re-injuring your most important player for the following season, just to get probably blown out in the wild card anyway by the 1st seed. Or the 2nd seed? What's the point? I mean, so this team, especially with the way the defense is playing, because they ain't picking up no type of slack, they're in trouble, man. And I think cooked might be premature, but they're getting to that point.
It's close.
All right, so we'll move right on from cooked or uncooked over the fire. And we're gonna get into our weekly climate change. This is pretty much just looking at the power rankings, the scores, and the standings after week number 9. And this is what I got. My top 11, just because I feel like 32 is too hard and overwhelming. But Bills at 1, Chiefs 2, Eagles 3, Cowboys 4, Vikings 5, Ravens 6, 49ers, Dolphins, Seahawks, Giants, Bengals. What are you thinking?
Oh, yeah. I mean, your top 3 is my top 3 in that same order. I find it weird that people are putting the Eagles 1. I know they're undefeated, but literally they haven't played anybody. Like, they beat the Vikings, who, the Vikings might be good. They might be bad. I don't know. But the Bills have definitely a way more impressive resume than the Eagles. So Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, my top 3. I don't know what the Cowboys are. I don't believe in Dak Prescott very much. I don't know what the Vikings. Literally outside of those top 3, I don't know what the NFL is this year. I have no idea what's going on in this league. Like, it seems like any given week, some presumed bad team is beating some presumed good team. So I see the Ravens at 6. Like, the Ravens are probably 6, but they might be 15 too. I have no idea right now. But your top 3, 100% with you in that same exact order.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's the Ravens could be 6, they could be 4, but they also could be 15. It's been a wacky year, and I actually saw a funny tweet, almost kind of like referring to the Eagles thing of they haven't beat anybody type of narrative, and they showed the chart of, I would assume, like the DVOA of offenses for teams or something along the lines. I don't remember what the chart actually was, but pretty much the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Eagles were pretty much all the way near the top of the chart. And then literally everyone else was in the middle. Just everyone else. It's like they haven't beat anybody else, but who else is there to beat? I mean, if they're not playing the Bills, they're not playing the Eagles or the Chiefs. It's like, who's there actually to beat? It's been a wacky year. We were going into this season expecting it to be the most competitive, at least AFC, that we've seen ever. I was talking historics. Like, that's how high I was on this season, and it's been the complete opposite. We're going to be looking at an in the hunt graphic that is extremely big, like a massive in the hunt graphic, because of all of the middle tier teams that, maybe teams that were really bad or supposed to be bad that played above expectations, or teams that were supposed to be really good that have fallen below them. So it's just going to be this massive mediocre sub 500 teams trying to shove themselves into the 6th and 7th wild card spots. Cause I think the 5th one's going to be locked up by probably Miami. So
yeah,
it's going to be left between 6 and 7. And I don't want to get into that. It's actually one of my questions, but yeah, very, very weird year so far. But I think that the top 3 should be unanimous, whatever order you have it in. If you want to make your argument one way or another.
I'll say just real quick, a buddy of mine, he's an Eagles fan. He texted me before the season started, and he said, look at the Eagles schedule and tell me how they don't win 9.5 games, which was their line. I looked at their schedule. I instantly put a very large sum of money on them to cover their win total, because I've never seen a schedule as easy as their schedule is. And again, Bills fans have heard that forever, right? We've been called paper tigers for years now. And I think this year the Bills are kind of proving, hey, we're not paper tigers, we're literal tigers. But, Eagles, if you look at their schedule right now, they could go 17-0, and I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be impressed, I won't say, because I don't know how they're going to play in the playoffs with the style of football they play, but they could go 17-0, and I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, they've played good enough football to get to that point. I mean, there really hasn't even been a quarter that I can recall. Not that I watch every second of Eagles games, but I catch a majority of them, at least I feel like, to make enough of an educated opinion to where I believe that, they really haven't stuttered. I haven't felt like they've slowed down or looked stoppable or human. I mean, last week, the Bills, for the first time all season, other than the Miami game, which I don't even count, to be honest. But the second half of the Packers game was the first time I looked at the Bills and I'm like, wow, they're human, to some rate. And I feel like I haven't had that moment with the Eagles yet. And like I said, I haven't watched all their games like I do with the Bills. So I'm sure it's happened at one point or another. But the way Jalen Hurts has been, that I think he's been a top 3 dual threat this season with the connection he's had with A.J. Brown. It's been remarkable. And the defense, playing to the expectations that they were set to have. I mean, that team is built to make it very far because of the way they're constructed, especially in the trenches, man. They win every game in the trenches because of how good their offensive line is. It's easily the best line their offensive line is the best in the league, and their defensive front only got better adding Robert Quinn, which is just an absurd thought. Best trenches in the NFL without question.
100% agree.
All right, so we'll move on. Going to get into the Q&A of the show real quick. I have a few questions for you that I want to touch on, even though it's pretty much all questions, honestly, but that's okay. The first question I have for you is going back to the trade deadline. What were the biggest trade deadline surprises? Any, which I guess we've talked about a lot of them, but, the biggest surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Packers, right? I thought the Packers would make a move, and they didn't. I think outside of that, there's 3 names that kind of stand out to me that didn't move. Kareem Hunt, I thought he was going somewhere. I don't know if I necessarily wanted him on the Bills or not, but it just seemed like the Browns were prepped to move Kareem Hunt, and they didn't. Brandon Cooks on the Texans, like the Texans are a complete mess. Like their roster is such a mess right now. I thought if they could get anything for Cooks while also freeing up some cap space, might as well do it. They didn't do that. And the last one, Cam Akers on the Rams, that's such a weird situation. Like the Rams seem to hate Cam Akers. Cam Akers seems to hate the Rams. It seemed pretty clear that they were going to try to trade him or at a minimum cut him. But then the reports came out, I think yesterday, where they said if the Rams can't trade Cam Akers is coming back to the Rams. So I think I thought it was a little odd that those 3 didn't go. And then I guess the last thing is there was a lot of trades. This was atypical. This is the most trades, I believe, ever on a trade deadline day. So that is surprising just because it's never happened before. So interesting trade deadline.
Yeah, it was, we were touching on it earlier. I felt like I was running a sprint trying to keep up with everything, man. There was just, tweet after tweet. I mean, we got to like 11 a.m. and nothing had happened. I'm like, shows us this is how today's going to go. And then all of a sudden it was just fire, shot after shot after shot of trades. It started out with the TJ Hawkinson trade. I believe that was the first one. And it really didn't slow down from there. I mean, I thought, I can't remember what the last one was, but even when I thought it was going to slow down, then the Bills came in and traded for Hines. I think there was another small trade that happened with the Jets. There was just, little trades that happened here and there. And it was just, shot after shot of trades. It was wild. And, a couple of players that you already touched on that I would have put money on if it was possible that would have been moved. I mean, Kareem Hunt would have been at the top of that list. I still can't believe the guys on that roster. I don't know what they're doing, hemorrhaging all these running backs, what benefit it is to them. I guess, if they're worried about injuries, always having a guy there to back up. The backup, I guess, hypothetically is good. But what good does it do for a team that you would think would like to try and make some sort of run, knowing that Deshaun Watson is coming back at the back half of the season?
Yeah.
So Pokemon says the biggest surprise they've seen is Claypool. I thought Claypool was kind of a done deal. I thought, I would have put him on my list of players that I thought for sure would be out the door by the deadline. But I thought he would go to not the Bears. I don't know why. I just had a feeling the Bears wouldn't actually go for a wide receiver, as some people suspected. I think I would have said the Ravens or the Packers. I even had the
go to a
Titans.
team competing.
Yeah,
like one that's competing for something, not the Bears that aren't competing. But I mean, like we said earlier, it kind of makes sense now that it's happened. Like hindsight's 2020, right? But I'm with you. Like I thought Claypool was going somewhere.
Yeah, I definitely did. And I thought I even had the Titans on my list of teams that could potentially be in the wide receiver market, but they were pretty quiet today too. I mean, they're 5-2. Their best receivers, Robert Woods, Treylon Burks, who they essentially traded A.J. Brown for, is out. So I was kind of surprised that they didn't do a little bit more today. But nevertheless, biggest trade surprises today. But we'll move into our second question, which is going to be this, which we were also somewhat touching on. Who are your 3 wildcard team predictions for the AFC?
Jeez. Oh man. So Dolphins for sure. Like I'm pretty confident in that. I'm gonna go Chargers. I don't really know how the Chargers can't figure it out. Like Justin Herbert, he's not playing that well this year, but he's too talented for them not to make the playoffs in the 3rd consecutive season. Like they should have made it last year if Herbert just had a good game against the Raiders, which is kind of telling what Herbert's capable of. So yeah, I got Chargers, Dolphins, and then I got to find a 3rd in the AFC. Oh my gosh. Man, I don't know. Like it's not coming from the AFC South. I'm not buying the Jets making it. I'm not buying the Patriots making it. The Broncos and Raiders aren't making it. So then I got to go to the AFC North. Dude, I can't say Bengals. I can't do it. So
Who's left?
I'm going to say Browns.
The Browns?
I don't even know how I'm going to say the Browns, but there's no other team. There's literally no other team in the AFC that's good. And it's the Bengals or Browns. It's one of those two, and I don't want to say the Bengals.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. Right. I mean, the Dolphins, I think, are a lock. I think the Patriots, had they not lost to the Bears a couple weeks ago on Monday night, they could have been in this conversation a little bit more convincingly. But, you go through the rest of the conference and the Bengals not convincing at the moment. Neither of us are rooting for them to make the postseason. The AFC South is a disaster. And, you're kind of left with the North. And, I mean, the Browns, if we're being honest, probably should have a better record than 3-5. They lost the Jets on an onside kick. They probably should have beaten the Chargers, but Cade York missed, a game-winning field goal. So that's 2 wins that could go in their favor. I can't remember what other games they lost. But nevertheless, I mean, they have been 1 play away from having the record, or 2 plays away from having the record kind of flipped on its head. And they showed the world that, maybe they're good or the Bengals are just that bad, which time will tell. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue against the Browns, considering the landscape of the rest of the AFC at the moment. So I think I have to
watch it be the Jets. I really don't want I want them to hit 20 years on their their streak of not making the playoffs. I want it to be longer than the Bills. And they do. A team quarterback by Zach Wilson does not deserve to make the playoffs. I don't care that it's Zach Wilson's 2nd year, that he was hurt for part of the season. He is absolutely horrendous. He is a terrible quarterback. Maybe he can evolve into something at some point in time, but I think the Bills are going to absolutely embarrass him on Sunday. Please, God, let the Bills embarrass him, because if somehow the Bills lose that game and some Jets fans find this clip, I'm screwed.
I don't think there's any way in hell. I mean, this is as wacky as the year has been. I don't think this is on the radar of potential games the Bills could lose this season, especially considering Breece Hall went down. He became their identity very fast. And Zach Wilson just basically had to play mistake-free football and let Breece Hall do the rest, which he struggled with. ironically enough, with Breece Hall healthy, and now that he's gone, they did trade for James Robinson, but he's not acclimated yet. And he's been having to pick up some slack, and he's been dropping it. So, yeah, it's not looking bright for the Jets, who've had a very nice rebuild in the making, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've been drilling draft picks. They've paid the right guys this offseason. They've looked good in the rebuild process. But, I mean, the quarterback position is going to be something that they have to worry about. And I'd argue that I don't even think the Jets believe in Zach Wilson themselves, and that's why they went and got James Robinson, because they needed somebody to take on a workload that Breece Hall had originally. And I think that's what James Robinson's going to have to do if this team wants to stay afloat.
Yeah, 100%
right.
agree.
So, one more segment before we get into the quiz game. Rolling through all the news. I mean, there's just so much to talk about. It's actually crazy comparing to the offseason where it was just a barren wasteland. But yeah, we'll move into the underdog of the week. Pretty straightforward. We're going to touch on who we think, an underdog that could potentially come out with the victory this week. And every week there's at least 5 or 6 options. It's just a matter of figuring out which one it actually is. So we'll start with, you want to start with your underdog?
Yeah, I can. I'll do mine first.
Wait,
yeah.
Actually, I forgot a question. Do you mind going back?
Yeah.
I forgot a Q&A question that I actually really want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. No, I'm good.
All right, so my Q&A question is going to be this. Did Josh put himself behind the 8 ball for MVP after the second half of the Green Bay game?
No. He's still the MVP favorite in my opinion. I tweeted this out today too. The last 5 MVPs have been the number 1 seed in their respective conference. I don't think that should play a role, because I think MVP should be a player that kind of can carry their team, whether or not their team's 9-8 or whether their team's 16-1 shouldn't really matter if that player is playing at an absurd level. Allen has played a single bad half of football this season. Let's compare it to Patrick Mahomes, right? Patrick Mahomes played bad against the Colts and lost. Josh Allen beat Patrick Mahomes head to head. Again, it's Josh Allen plays on offense, Patrick Mahomes plays on offense. I don't think that wins are a quarterback stat, but at the end of the day, the Bills did beat the Chiefs. And when crunch time hit, Josh led his team down the field for a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes threw the interception. At the end of the year, that's going to play a role. And I think it's between Josh and Mahomes. I know people want to bring Jalen Hurts into the conversation. I'm not ready to do that just yet. As long as Allen can kind of maintain the number 1 seed in the AFC, I think it's his to lose, and just throwing 2 interceptions in one half isn't going to take that away from him.
Yeah, I mean, I of course agree. I just figured I'd throw it out there because I saw some chatter on Twitter of people, making their near midseason MVP predictions, and people still had Mahomes over him, and I'm just sitting there kind of like scratching my head a little bit. What does Josh have to do, man? I mean, what more is it going to take for people to acknowledge? Not that I'm completely content with you thinking Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL. In fact, I still believe it. I think Mahomes is still the guy until Josh can, beat him in the big game, which of course I think he has. There's an argument for that, but you get where I'm going. Long story short, I mean, you just have to acknowledge what Josh has done, and I think people are just being willfully ignorant. Purposely.
You can tell me. I'm also agree with you. Like, if somebody tells me Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, I'll say yes, that makes sense. But if somebody tells me Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the NFL, I'll say the same thing. I'm on board with the idea that Josh is the best now, but it's such a small line between the two of them. It could tip one way or another every single week. But MVP isn't, at the end of the season, as absurd as it is, it's not about who the best player in the league is. It really isn't. Otherwise, Cooper Kupp would have won it last year. It's about who the best quarterback is on the best team. And I think right now the Bills are the best team, and Josh Allen's playing the best football in the NFL.
Yep, I 100% agree. And that's the big caveat with the MVP award. It's it always feels like it's given, it's awarded incorrectly. And it should go to a player that, like you mentioned, whether it's a 9-win team or a 15-win team, if that quarterback is, uplifting, or whoever the player is, it doesn't have to be a quarterback, uplifting their team to the level they're reaching, I think they deserve it. I mean, that's what the most valuable player literally means. It's their most valuable to the football team. And if they weren't there, the team would sink. And I think Josh Allen, has made it very clear that if he was not on the Bills offense, we would sink, and we would sink. That's pretty much it. So I don't know what it's going to take for people to just wake up and smell the roses, but we'll move on to the underdog now. Just wanted to touch on that real quick. And do you want to start with yours?
Yeah, I'll hit mine. Yeah, so underdog of the week, right? So this one was a little hard for me because this schedule is kind of weird this week. But we've been talking about it for a bit now on this show. So I'm going to go Panthers over Bengals. The Panthers are 7.5-point favorites. They played good football last week against the Falcons, who are a surprisingly good football team. I don't really understand how that works either. PJ Walker, right? Yeah,
Yep.
against Joe Burrow. There's an argument to be made No, I'm not going to do it. I was going to say argument to be made who the better quarterback is in this game, but no, the Panthers are feisty and the Bengals are kind of in a free fall right now. There's a chance the Panthers win this game.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we saw the heroics that PJ Walker pulled off at the end of that game, and I was very happy for the guy. At least giving them the best chance to win, at least because obviously it went south. But I was happy to see a guy that he's come from the XFL. He was the third quarterback on the roster going into the year. He's one of those. He's working his way into the conversation of one of those guys that always finds his way to the field, no matter what. Like no matter how deep on the depth chart he can get buried, he's some way somehow going to end up under center for at least the Panthers in this case. But yeah, I mean, after watching the Bengals on Monday night, there's no reason why we can't include the possibility of this being a Panthers victory. Do you know if the Panthers are home?
I honestly, I'm not even sure. 7.5. I think they're home. Maybe they're. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, we saw what Deonta Foreman did to the Falcons, defensive front. I don't think the Bengals have much better up there. So I mean, if he can go out there and go crazy again, I think the Bengals have just as hard of a time with him as they did with Nick Chubb.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So we'll get on to my underdog real quick. And talking about the Falcons too. I have the Falcons taking down the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, the Chargers, I don't think Keenan Allen's 100%. I don't think he's going to be this entire season. I think he's going to try and fight through this injury for the sake of his football team. Mike Williams went down. They lost Rashawn Slater. Joey Bosa's still out. The list goes on. And we saw the Falcons, they've been playing good football this season. They're 4-4 at the moment. They run the ball like hell. And Arthur Smith, maybe he figured out that Kyle Pitts is actually good last week. Who knows? maybe he'll finally, start to work him into the game plan, not by mistake, and actually start to scheme around him. But, I could see this game being dominated in time of possession by the Falcons run game and the Chargers defensive front not being able to slow it down, not being able to get Justin Herbert back on the field. And it could be a lower scoring affair in which just, the Chargers run out of time and, they have not looked good really at all, if we're being honest. So I'm thinking I'm going to take the Falcons.
Yeah, that pick makes sense to me too. I know I said Chargers were one of my playoff teams, but I've been very underwhelmed by them this year. Yeah. I mean, they made the massive, and I know he's hurt right now, so it's a little harsh to kind of say this, but they made the massive mistake of signing J.C. Jackson to a huge contract when, as Bills fans, we saw Stephon Diggs roast him over and over again, and now Chargers fans are seeing every single wide receiver roast him. Still hope he gets healthy, hope he gets better. Feel bad for him on that front. But yeah, I mean, the Chargers are kind of injury riddled. They haven't looked great in that dominant AFC West that was supposed to be the most competitive, best division in football history. Looks absolutely horrible outside of the Chiefs. So yeah, I could see the Falcons, beating the Chargers. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the way the year is going, nothing can surprise me at this point. It's been parody. Parody has been, it's fun. I embrace chaos, but when I'm trying to, do the whole content thing, make predictions, make money, it's really annoying. It's very, very annoying at the end of the day. So I'd like them to tune down the rigging a little bit, if you will. But all right, so that'll carry us into the final segment of the show, the most anticipated being the Caveman's Quiz Game. It's like, like we were talking about prior to the show. It's a little bit different than it was the last time you were here. So this is how it works after the Matt Perino incident. We have 5 NFL quiz questions, an offseason events question, a stats, a history, a draft, and an awards question. You can choose between the easy, the medium, and the hard for each category. Easy is worth 10 points, medium is worth 20, hard is worth 30. You can have a true-false follow-up question. If you get the answer, get the question right, you get the true-false follow-up, which will be worth half of the original question. Then there's a mulligan, which you can use at any point in the game. You don't have to use it as soon as a question is wrong. You can hold it till the end and then go back to a different category. But quick disclaimer, if you take the medium question for like draft and then you go back to the draft for the mulligan, I don't have another medium, if that makes sense. And then there's a final wager question, which pretty much works like Final Jeopardy. So yeah, this is what the leaderboard's looking like right now. It's riddled with cover one guys. We got Judge and we got Dave, the Air Raid Hour guys. Dave held the spot for a little bit. Judge had it up until last week when Frank came on, and he had a heroic effort to take the top spot. And he's at 214. So guys are creeping into the 200s, and you have an opportunity to make your mark and join the other cover one guys, or potentially boot Dave off. Actually, you'd be booting Dave off. So, all right, we'll hop right into things and start with the off-season events question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
I'm going to pick hard for every single one, and I'm not quite confident I won't get a 0 here, but I'm doing hard for every single one. Let's go for perfect.
You're not the first person to actually come on and do that. Funny enough, I actually had Dan Bacon come on, and he did the same exact strategy, and he was first place for a couple weeks, so you never know. All right, so we're going to start off with the hard off-season events question, and it is going to be this. Where did wide receiver Byron Pringle sign this offseason?
Chicago Bears.
You are right. Wow, you knocked that one out of the park. The Chicago Bears is correct. That's going to be – I've had a hard time doing math on this show, so I got to wipe.
Okay. So
this is going to be 30 points. You're going to help me with this, I promise. Yeah. So 30 points on the board. The true-false follow-up is going to be this. This is worth 15 points. True-false. Pringle has more receiving yards than Dawson Knox.
Oh, my God. Oh, boy. I'm going to go false.
You are correct. It is false.
Okay.
Byron Pringle got hurt halfway through the first quarter in the first game.
I knew he got hurt. I just didn't know if maybe he caught like a 90-yard touchdown.
Yeah, because Dawson, unfortunately, he hasn't really receiving at least hasn't been as prominent as he was last year. But that's another 15 points. It's a lot of light.
Got it.
So that's 45 on the board. So you're up to 45 after the first question. That's one hell of a start. And assuming you're going to take the hard question for the stats, right? You going to keep going hard?
For stats. Okay, yeah, let's keep going.
All right, he's going to keep going hard. What's this question is going to be this. 3 teams put up 50 points in a game last year. Can you name 2?
3 teams put up 50 points in a game last year. Can I name 2? 3 teams put up 50 points. Oh my gosh. I'm going to go. I got to just name 2 of them, right?
Yep.
Jeez, this is hard, man. I'm going to go Chiefs and Bengals.
It is not the Chiefs and Bengals. They were not on this list. You'll actually be a little bit surprised. Do you want to hear the teams that are on this list?
The Bills aren't on it. I'm pretty confident of that. The Rams, I wouldn't think are on it. Who's on it?
You're going to be kind of disgusted. So the Cowboys are on this, right? The Cowboys lit it up last year. Okay. The other 2 teams are the Patriots. They did it twice against the Jags and the Jets. They dropped 250 burgers. And the Seahawks. The Seahawks put up 50 at one point last year against.
Yeah, there was. I mean, maybe the Cowboys would have been on my radar. Maybe they did it in the last game, or no, they did it early on in the season. I think. I don't know when they did it, but yeah, Patriots. No, I didn't know they did it twice.
Yeah, they did it twice. To the poor Jets and the Jags, they ran up the score on these poor teams that did not belong in the game at the time. And the Seahawks, I think, did it in like week 17 against the Lions and put up 50 points. I think it was 51 or something along the lines of that. But yeah, you can use your mulligan here if you want, or if you want to hold on to it. Like I said, you can.
Can I hold it and come back to stats if I mess up everything else?
Yeah, totally. You can hold it and come back.
Right,
so
let's do that.
Quick score update. 45 points. That's the number. 45 points. We're going to keep that in mind. Question number 3. This is a history question. You want to stick with the hard?
Oh, man. I'm not. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. All right.
He's going to continue shooting for the stars. The hard history question is, which player owns the longest missed field goal return touchdown in NFL history?
Man, I can picture it, I think, unless it happened a long time ago. I thought Devin Hester had one. I'm going to go Devin Hester.
It's not Devin Hester. You're going to know it when I say it. It was Antonio Cromartie.
I can picture him on the
Yeah.
back. It was 109 yards, right? He caught it right at the back of the end zone.
Yep, he caught it right at the back of the end zone, took it all the way right before halftime. The clock hit 0. Minnesota Vikings missed the field goal, and he ran it all the way. I can also, if I was asked this question, I could literally see the play replaying in my mind and watching it all unfold, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you.
I could see it, but I kept going into putting him in a Bears jersey, which was a Devin Hester.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, he definitely would be on a lot of people's radar, right? All right, so you want to hold on to the mulligan still, I assume?
I'm going to keep holding it, yep.
All right, he's going to hold on to it. So we'll get to the draft question. Do you want to do the easy, the medium, or the hard?
I'm do the hard. Let's do the hard.
All right, he's going to keep firing. I respect it. I respect the strategy. Here it is. Who is the 25-year-old rookie wide receiver that was drafted by the Bears this season?
Oh, was he a corner or wide receiver? I think who I'm going to say is a corner, but I think it's Velus Jones.
You're right. It is Velus Jones. It is correct.
Okay.
It was Velus Jones.
In my head, it's saying he's a corner, but yeah, I'm pretty sure he's a wide receiver now that you say it.
Yes, you are correct. So that's 30 more points. That's 75 if my math does not do me wrong, which it has many times. But 75 points on the whiteboard. Moving on to the true false. That's going to be this. True false. He went to Texas Tech.
Velus Jones went to Texas Tech. Velus Jones went to oh boy, false.
You're right. He was not
Okay.
a Texas Tech alum. He actually went with the Longhorns, actually. So you are right. Still a Texas school. So that's another 15. 75 plus 15 is 90 points on the board. So you're killing it. You are. You have an opportunity with the wager and the mulligan even, and there's still one more question. So definitely nothing to sweat yet. This is the awards question. Do you want to do the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Let's do the hard one. Let's do the hard one.
He's gonna do it again. Here's the hard question for the awards. Who was the Kansas City Chiefs running back to take home the Offensive Player of the Year award in 2002?
Oh my God, you're saying this is hard, which is making me think it's not who I'm going to say it is. Oh, Offensive Player of the Year in 2002. The name I'm going to say is wrong. And now for the sake of I'm going to say Priest Holmes. It's not Priest Holmes. Who
It is Priest Holmes. You're right.
Oh, it is?
Priest
Okay.
Holmes. Yes, it is. Good job.
Okay.
That's 30 points. That's 120 now after the 90. So we'll get the true false follow-up out of the way, which is going to be this. He was the only running back to win Offensive Player of the Year for Kansas City. True or false?
Oh, false.
Actually, it's true.
Oh, it's true.
Jamal Charles,
Who-
number 1, if that was who you had in mind.
No, there was another guy from playing Madden. There's a running
Oh.
back on their team that was like historically good.
I know who you're talking about, but he actually didn't win it. I can't remember. Was it a Cole? Was he a fullback? Okoyo?
Yeah, he's the nightmare. The Nigerian Nightmare was a fullback, but there's one more player too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm not sure. I think the trick behind that question was to have you think Jamal Charles. But yeah, it was actually true. The only other player that's won Offensive Player of the Year for the Chiefs is actually Patrick Mahomes in 2018.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I know it's crazy, right? Knowing the amount of talent that's gone in and out of there. But 120 points on the board, and you have the mulligan. Which category do you want to go back to? And you have a medium, probably medium. I assume you want to touch on, but
yeah, we'll do medium. We'll do stats.
All right, he's going to go back to medium stats. Here's the medium stats question. You got 120 to keep in mind. There are 2 non-running backs in the top 15 of rushing touchdowns so far this year. Name one.
Oh, Jalen Hurts.
Yep, pretty easy enough. Jalen Hurts is on that list. I was going to make you name 2, but I feel like that would have been a little bit too hard for me. I don't know. Could you name the other one just out of curiosity?
Justin Fields.
It's not, actually. It's Taysom Hill.
Oh,
yeah, I know. But I mean, you still got it. That's why I feel like it would have been, I don't know if it would have qualified as a medium question had I asked you both, because there's just so many options that it almost would have been too hard to just pick out of all of them, I guess.
Yeah, Taysom's an interesting one too. Yeah, I guess he could be. Yeah, he's a quarterback still. And I think he started at quarterback for them one game too this season, right? Maybe.
Yeah, he did. Well, it would have been rushing touchdowns anyway, not passing.
Yeah,
so,
true.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're right. I mean, the dude 100% is on that list. But yeah, all right. So the true false follow up for that is going to be this. Well, never mind. I'll just give you. For it.
I mean, I guarantee you, I would not have said Josh Allen, because, like I said, I did say. Who did I say?
Justin Fields.
I would have said false.
Good point. So yeah, you're right. That would be 10 points. So you are up to 150 points on the board. So you're going to the wager question, and this is what the leaderboard looks like. What do you want to do?
I mean, I'm betting it all.
Oh, you are going to bet it? Are you going to put every single penny you got down?
Let's do it. Yeah. Let me take that one spot by a mile for sure.
All right. So that would be 300 points that you would end up coming away with. I mean, after what happened last time, you held the top spot and you were able to come away with it. And then unfortunately you were dethroned, but now you're here. The pressure's on. And I'm excited to see how this goes. So for 150 points, this is the wager question. Let me type in the points. Here it is. Who are the Patriots playing against when the Deflategate scandal actually occurred in the AFC Championship game of the 2015 NFL season?
So who they were playing against when the balls were deflated?
Yes.
It was the Colts.
It was the Colts. You are correct. That's 150 points. Wow. Look at that. You come on and you claim your title like it was nothing. You came on, bodied the hard questions, and you are on top with 300 points. Wow. Congratulations, man.
So when you have Perino on next week or in a month or whenever, and he cheats to beat me again, I'll understand. I'll come back on. I'll just dominate him again.
Well, if he is able to come back out and reclaim that throne, legal or not, you're 100%. Again, of course, is always welcome back to try and reclaim that throne. But like I said, congratulations, man. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. Like literally every little bit of the NFL, I feel like we touched on to some capacity. So I appreciate you taking the time. And thank you for joining me.
Hey, man, I love your show. I love the format. It's really cool. It's fun. It's different than anything anyone else does right now, which is something that most people don't do. Most people are doing the same shtick or same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. You're doing something different. So anytime you want me on, I'm more than happy to come. I have a good time both times I've been on here. So, yeah, again, I loved it, dude.
I appreciate it, man, a lot. So, like I said, thank you. It does mean a lot to hear that, and I, put in a lot of effort. So, hearing it makes me very appreciative. So, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. Anybody that enjoyed, thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking around, leaving comments, dropping a like, subscribing, doing all that fun stuff. Be sure you're checking out Hansel. All the social medias will be down in the description below. Be sure you're following Cover One as well on your socials. And the best follow on Bill's Twitter. Next to the Buffalo fan base, of course, too. But the Cover One is, your X's and O's of football. They're the best in the business. So be sure you're checking them out. Hansel does a fantastic job on his website. He does his articles every week. He, of course, being part of Cover One, he's the real deal. Like I was just talking about, he belongs right in. So thank you for hopping on. And for anybody that did enjoy, thank you for popping in. And I'll see you guys later. Go Bills.